The void of space stretched endlessly before the invincible dawn, its sleek hull glinting faintly under the dim light of a distant star. The warship drifted silently through the swirling haze of a purple nebula, its engines muted to avoid detection. Captain Ilara Voss stood on the bridge, her sharp green eyes scanning the holographic displays that floated before her. She was a woman hardened by years of service, her face lined with both wisdom and weariness. Around her, the crew worked in, practiced silence, their movements efficient as they monitored the ship's systems. "Captain," Lieutenant Marcus Kane called out from his station at the sensor array. His voice carried a hint of unease. "We're picking up faint energy signatures emanating from those asteroids ahead. Nothing conclusive yet, but it feels off." Ilara turned to him, her expression unreadable. "Faint how? Could it be natural?" Marcus hesitated, adjusting the data streams on his console. "It's hard to say. The readings are inconsistent, spikes here and there, but they're definitely not random. It's almost like someone's trying to mask them." Ilara frowned. "Natural phenomena didn't behave this way, not in this region of space." She glanced at the main viewport, where jagged asteroids loomed ominously against the backdrop of the glowing nebula. Something about the scene gnawed at her instincts. "Bring us closer," she ordered, her tone calm but firm. "Let's see what we're dealing with." The helmsman, Ensign Ava Torres, nodded and adjusted the controls. The invincible dawn surged forward, its thrusters humming softly as it navigated the treacherous field of debris. The crew braced themselves, knowing full well that venturing deeper into the asteroid belt could mean walking straight into an ambush. Tension builds as the ship moved closer. The sensors began to pick up more anomalies. Faint pulses of electromagnetic radiation flickered across the screens, too subtle to trigger alarms but enough to raise suspicion. Chief Engineer Ravi Patel leaned over Marcus's shoulder, scrutinizing the data. "These patterns, they're deliberate," Ravi muttered, rubbing his temples. "Whoever's out there knows exactly what they're doing. They're masking their presence while keeping tabs on us." Ilara crossed her arms, her gaze fixed on the viewport. "If they're watching us, then why haven't they made a move yet? What are they waiting for?" Before anyone could answer, the lights on the bridge flickered. A low hum filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. The crew exchanged nervous glances. "What's happening?" Ilara demanded, turning toward Ava. "I don't know, Captain," Ava replied, her fingers flying over the controls. "Something's interfering with our systems. It's not coming from inside the ship." Suddenly, the entire vessel shuddered violently. Alarms blared, red warning lights flashing across every console. On the main screen, dozens of shimmering shapes materialized out of nowhere, cloaked drones emerging from behind the asteroids. Their sleek insectoid designs gleamed menacingly in the reflected light of the nebula. "It's a trap," Marcus shouted, his voice cracking with panic. "They've been tracking us all along." Ilara clenched her jaw. "Raise shields. Prepare for evasive maneuvers." But it was already too late. The first wave of drones unleashed a barrage of EMP bursts, targeting the ship's critical systems. Sparks flew from overloaded circuits as consoles shorted out one by one. The artificial gravity faltered, sending loose objects floating into the air. Crew members scrambled to stabilize the situation, but chaos reigned supreme. The Krylos strike, through the chaos, a transmission crackled to life on the main screen. A towering figure appeared, a being with elongated limbs, bioluminescent markings covering its exoskeleton, and multifaceted eyes that glowed with cold intelligence. Its voice echoed through the bridge, distorted by translation software. "You are trespassing in Krylos territory," it said, its tone devoid of emotion. "Your kind has taken what does not belong to you. Now you will pay." Ilara stepped forward, her posture unwavering despite the dire circumstances. "We mean no harm," she replied, her voice steady. "We're simply patrolling this sector. If there's been a misunderstanding—" "There is no misunderstanding," the Krylos cut her off. "Your species consumes without restraint, leaving destruction in its wake. You will learn the consequences of your greed." Before Ilara could respond, another volley of attacks struck the ship. The cloaked drones swarmed around the invincible dawn, firing plasma bolts that tore through its weakened defenses. Explosions rocked the vessel, sending shockwaves rippling through the corridors. Smoke filled the bridge as emergency protocols kicked in, sealing off damaged sections of the ship. "Shields are down to 20%, Marcus yelled, frantically typing commands into his console. "We can't hold out much longer." Alara gritted her teeth, her mind racing. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and caught completely off guard. But surrender wasn't an option, not when the fate of humanity hung in the balance. "Ravi," she barked, turning to the chief engineer. "How close are we to activating the quantum disruptor?" Ravi paled. "Captain, you can't be serious. That thing hasn't even been tested in combat." "We don't have a choice," Alara snapped. "Do it, or we're dead." Ravi hesitated for a moment, then nodded grimly. He rushed to a secondary console, bypassing security protocols to access the experimental weapon system. Sweat dripped from his brow as he input the final sequence. "Charging now," he announced, his voice trembling. "But it'll take 30 seconds to reach full power." A desperate gamble time seemed to slow as the countdown ticked away. The Krylos drones pressed their advantage, unleashing relentless salvos that pushed the invincible Dawn to the brink of collapse. Fires raged in. The lower decks and injured crew members screamed for help. Yet amidst the carnage, Alara remained focused, her resolve unshaken. "Hold together, people," she commanded, her voice cutting through the din. "We're not done yet." Finally, the quantum disruptor reached full capacity. Ravi slammed, his fist onto the activation button, and a blinding pulse of energy erupted from the ship's core. The pulse expanded outward in a perfect sphere, washing over the surrounding area like a tidal wave. For a brief moment, everything went silent. Then, the Krylos drones froze mid-flight, their advanced systems overwhelmed by the disruptive field. One by one, they plummeted toward the asteroids below, their cloaking mechanisms failing and their weapons rendered inert. Even the lead Krylos vessel, which had been coordinating the attack, faltered as its sensors failed. On the bridge, the crew erupted into cheers, though exhaustion and relief were etched onto their faces. Alara allowed herself a small smile, but it quickly faded. The victory came at a cost. The ship was heavily damaged and many lives had been lost. Aftermath and revelation. As the dust settled, Alara addressed her crew over the intercom. "Good work, everyone. We survived, but we're far from safe. Damage reports indicate severe structural failures across multiple decks. We need to regroup and assess our options." While repairs were underway, a new transmission arrived. Not from the Krylos, but from Earth Command. Admiral Hayes' stern face appeared on the main screen, his expression grim. "Captain Voss," he began, cutting straight to the point. "What happened out there? Why did you activate the quantum disruptor without authorization?" Alara met his gaze head-on. "Because we were moments away from being annihilated, sir. The Krylos ambushed us. They've been lying in wait for who knows how long. If I hadn't used the disruptor, none of us would be alive right now." Hayes sighed heavily, pinching the bridge of his nose. "You've exposed classified technology to the enemy. Do you understand the implications of that?" "Yes, sir," Alara replied, her tone clipped. "But if you'd given us proper intel beforehand, maybe we wouldn't have walked blind into a death trap." Hayes ignored her jab. "Regardless, your orders are clear. Return to Earth immediately. There's more at stake than you realize." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Alara staring at the blank screen. More at stake? What could possibly be more important than surviving an alien assault? Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. Turning, she saw Lieutenant Kane standing there, holding a datapad. "Captain," he said hesitantly, "you might want to see this." He handed her the datapad, revealing intercepted communications between the Krylos fleet. As Alara read through the fragmented messages, her blood ran cold. The Krylos weren't invaders. They were refugees fleeing a dying star. Their attacks weren't acts of aggression. They were desperate attempts to secure resources for survival. Alara sank into her chair, the weight of the revelation pressing down on her. Humanity had just declared war on a species fighting for its very existence, And now, thanks to her actions, the conflict was spiraling out of control. The journey back to Earth was somber. The invincible Dawn limped through space, its hull scarred from the battle, and its systems barely holding together. The crew worked tirelessly to patch up the damage, but morale was low. Every corner of the ship bore reminders of the devastation they had endured. The scorched corridors, the flickering lights, the makeshift memorials for fallen comrades. Captain Ilara Voss stood on the observation deck, staring out at the endless void beyond the viewport. Her mind replayed the intercepted Krylos communications over and over again. Refugees, desperate survivors clinging to life. And yet, humanity had attacked them without hesitation, branding them as invaders. How many lives had been lost because of ignorance? Because of fear? Her thoughts were interrupted by Lieutenant Marcus Kane, who approached cautiously. "Captain, we've received clearance to dock at Earth's orbital defense station. Admiral Hayes wants us to debrief immediately." Ilara nodded, her expression unreadable. "Thank you, Marcus. Assemble the senior staff. We'll need to present a united front." As the ship docked, Ilara led her team through the sterile corridors of the orbital station. The air smelled faintly of ozone, and the walls hummed with the constant activity of military personnel. They were escorted to a secure briefing room, where Admiral Hayes awaited them, flanked by high-ranking officers and scientists. Revelation: humanity's hidden arsenal. The moment the doors slid shut, Admiral Hayes wasted no time. His sharp gaze swept across the room, settling on Ilara. "Captain Voss, explain yourself." Ilara didn't flinch. "With respect, sir, I'd like to understand why we weren't informed about the true nature of the quantum disruptor, or the fact that it was experimental technology." "If we'd known," Hayes cut her off with a wave of his hand. "You knew enough to follow orders. That weapon wasn't meant for use unless absolutely necessary." "And yet," Ilara countered, her voice steady but laced with steel, "it saved our lives. Without it, we wouldn't be here to have this conversation." A tense silence filled the room. Hayes leaned back in his chair, studying her intently. Finally, he sighed and gestured to one of the scientists standing nearby. "Dr. Elena Carter, please brief the captain and her crew." Dr. Carter stepped forward, clutching a data pad. She was a petite woman with sharp features and an air of quiet authority. "The quantum disruptor is part of Project Genesis, a classified initiative aimed at developing advanced weaponry based on alien artifacts discovered decades ago. These artifacts contain traces of quantum manipulation technology, far beyond anything we could replicate independently." She paused, allowing the gravity of her words to sink in. "We've spent years reverse engineering these artifacts, piecing together fragments of knowledge to create weapons capable of countering superior alien forces. The disruptor is our most successful prototype to date." Ilara's eyes narrowed. "So you're telling me that humanity has been secretly stockpiling alien tech? Why wasn't this shared with the fleet?" "Because secrecy ensures survival," Hayes interjected sharply. "If word got out that we've cracked alien technology, every hostile species in the galaxy would target us. We can't afford to show our hand until we're ready." Ilara clenched her fists beneath the table. "And what about the Krylos? Did you know they weren't invaders? That they're refugees trying to save their homeworld?" The room fell silent. Dr. Carter exchanged a glance with Hayes before speaking softly. "We suspected as much. Intelligence reports indicated unusual energy signatures emanating from their territory, consistent with efforts to stabilize a collapsing star. But confirmation came too late." "You mean you didn't care?" Ilara shot back, her voice rising. "You sent us into a war zone blindfolded, knowing full well we might be attacking innocent beings." Hayes slammed his fist onto the table, his face reddening. "Enough. You will not question my decisions, Captain. Our priority is protecting humanity, not playing diplomat with aliens." Ilara took a deep breath, forcing herself to remain calm. She turned to her crew, who sat quietly, their expressions ranging from shock to anger. "Sir, if I may, there's another way. If we reach out to the Krylos, explain the situation." "No," Hayes barked. "There will be no negotiations. Return to your ship and await further orders. Conflict within the crew back aboard the Invincible Dawn. Tensions simmered. The crew gathered in the mess hall, discussing the revelations in hushed tones. Some supported Alara's stance, believing diplomacy was the only path forward. Others sided with Hayes, convinced that humanity couldn't afford to appear weak in the face of potential threats. Lieutenant Marcus Kane approached Alara as she sat alone at a table, reviewing data on her tablet. "Captain, what happens now?" he asked quietly. Alara looked up, her green eyes reflecting both determination and doubt. "I don't know, Marcus. But I do know one thing. We can't keep fighting blindly. Not when we're wrong." Marcus hesitated, then sat down across from her. "Do you think the others will stand with you? Defying Hayes isn't exactly a career move." "I'm not doing this for my career," Alara replied firmly. "I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do. If we have a chance to prevent more bloodshed, we owe it to ourselves, and to the Krylos, to take it." Before Marcus could respond, Chief Engineer Ravi Patel joined them, carrying a cup of coffee. "Captain, I've been running simulations on the quantum disruptor. It's stable enough for another charge, but using it again could permanently damage the ship's core." Alara nodded thoughtfully. "Good to know. Keep refining those calculations. We might need them sooner than expected." Ravi frowned. "Are you planning something, Captain?" Alara met his gaze evenly. "Let's just say I'm considering all options." Foreshadowing. A rogue scientist's warning. Later that evening, Alara received a discreet message from an unknown sender. Curious, she followed the instructions to meet in a secluded maintenance bay. There she found Dr. Elena Carter waiting for her, looking nervous but resolute. "Captain Voss," Carter began, glancing around to ensure they were alone. "What I'm about to tell you stays between us, understand?" Alara crossed her arms. "Go ahead." Carter handed her a small data chip. "This contains everything we've learned about the Krylos, their history, their struggles, their intentions. They're not invaders, Captain. Their sun is collapsing, and they're desperate to harvest helium-3 isotopes to stabilize it. Without those resources, their entire civilization will perish." Alara's stomach churned. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because Admiral Hayes doesn't care," Carter said bluntly. "He sees the Krylos as a threat to eliminate, not a problem to solve. But you're different. You've seen the cost of this war firsthand. You have the power to change things." Alara stared at the data chip, her mind racing. Betraying Earth Command would label her a traitor, yet doing nothing would condemn countless lives to death, including her own conscience. "What do you suggest?" "I do?" she asked finally. Carter placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Reach out to the Krylos. Offer them a truce. Show them that not all humans are monsters. If anyone can bridge this gap, it's you." Climactic decision. That night, Alara convened a secret meeting with her most trusted officers, Lieutenant Kane, Chief Engineer Patel, and Ensign Ava Torres. She laid out the information provided by Dr. Carter, along with her plan to disobey orders and seek peace with the Krylos. Predictably, reactions were mixed. Ava argued passionately against risking the crew's lives for a diplomatic mission, while Marcus expressed cautious support. Ravi remained pragmatic, focusing on the technical challenges of navigating Krylos territory undetected. In the end, Alara made her decision clear. "I won't force any of you to come with me, but if even one person believes in this cause, I'll see it through. We owe it to ourselves, and to the Krylos, to try." To her relief, her officers agreed to stand by her side. Together, they devised a plan to slip away under the guise of routine repairs, using the damaged state of the Invincible Dawn as cover. With the quantum disruptor recharged and ready, they prepared to embark on a perilous journey into the heart of the nebula. As the ship disengaged from the orbital station, Alara gazed at the receding blue-green orb of Earth. For the first time, in years, she felt a glimmer of hope amidst the chaos. The road ahead would be fraught with danger, but she was determined to forge a new path, one built on understanding rather than destruction. Journey through danger, the nebula loomed ahead, its swirling hues of purple and gold casting an eerie glow over the invincible dawn. The ship drifted silently through the dense clouds of ionized gas, its systems running at minimal power to avoid detection. Every member of the crew was on edge, knowing that one wrong move could spell disaster. Captain Ilara Voss stood on the bridge, her gaze fixed on the main viewport. The nebula was both beautiful and terrifying, a vast expanse of cosmic chaos, hiding untold dangers. Her mind raced with possibilities. Would the Krylos listen to reason? Or would they see her arrival as another act of aggression? "Status report," she ordered, breaking the tense silence. Lieutenant Marcus Kane glanced up from his console. "Sensors are picking up intermittent energy signatures, but nothing definitive yet. Could be natural phenomena, or cloaked patrols, Chief." Engineer Ravi Patel chimed in from his station. "Quantum disruptor is fully charged and ready for use, Captain. But remember, firing it again will push the core to its limits. We might not survive another activation." Ilara nodded grimly. "Understood, let's hope it doesn't come to that." Ensign Ava Torres adjusted the ship's course, weaving through the treacherous asteroid field that marked the outer edge of Krylos territory. "We're approaching the coordinates Dr. Carter provided," she announced. "If intel is correct, their capital ship should be somewhere inside this sector." As they ventured deeper, the nebula grew darker, its vibrant colors muted by thick layers of cosmic dust. Static crackled across the comm channels, and faint distortions appeared on the sensor displays. It was clear that the Krylos had deployed sophisticated jamming fields to mask their presence. Suddenly, the ship shuddered violently as it grazed a hidden electromagnetic storm. Sparks flew from overloaded circuits and warning alarms blared throughout the vessel. "Shields holding at 60%, Marcus shouted, his voice tinged with panic. "Another hit like that, and we're done for." "Steady as she goes," Ilara commanded, her tone calm despite the chaos. "Ava, adjust our trajectory to avoid those storms. Ravi, reroute auxiliary power to the shields." The crew worked feverishly, stabilizing the ship just as it emerged from the worst of the turbulence. Breathing heavily, Ilara turned to her. "Officers. Everyone okay?" "We're alive," Ravi replied dryly. "But barely." Ilara allowed herself a small smile. "Good. Keep your eyes peeled. We're close now." First contact hours passed, each moment stretching longer than the last. Finally, the sensors detected a massive structure ahead, a colossal vessel unlike anything humanity had encountered before. Its sleek organic design seemed almost alive, pulsating faintly with bioluminescent patterns. "There it is," Marcus whispered, awe evident in his voice. "Their capital ship." Ilara leaned forward, studying the image on the main screen. "Hail them. Use the universal translator protocols." The transmission went out, but there was no immediate response. Just as Ilara began to fear they'd been ignored, a figure materialized on the view screen. It was a Krylos, taller and more imposing than the ones they'd faced earlier, with intricate markings glowing softly across its exoskeleton. "You dare enter our domain again?" the Krylos demanded, its voice cold and metallic through the translator. "Your kind has brought only death to our people." Ilara stepped closer to the screen, her expression resolute. "I am Captain Ilara Voss of the human warship, the Invincible. Dawn, I'm not here to fight. I've come to negotiate peace." The Krylos tilted its head, its multifaceted eyes scanning her intently. "Peace? After what your fleet has done? Explain yourself." Ilara took a deep breath. "Not all humans share the same beliefs. Many of us didn't know about your plight until recently. When we did, I chose to defy my superiors and seek you out. I believe we can help each other if you'll allow it." For a long moment, the Krylos said nothing. Then, after what felt like an eternity, it spoke again. "You speak boldly for someone so outnumbered and outgunned. Why should we trust you?" "Because we have no choice," Ilara replied honestly. "If we don't find a way to coexist, both our species will suffer." Your star is dying, and we possess resources that could save it. In return, perhaps you can teach us how to better understand the universe." The Krylos leader, identified as Thalvern, considered her words carefully. Finally, it nodded. "Very well. Dock with our vessel. We will hear you out." Shared. Struggles once aboard the Krylos capital ship. Alara and her senior staff were escorted to a grand chamber filled with towering crystalline structures that emitted soft, harmonic tones. Thalvern awaited them, flanked by several advisors. Despite the obvious differences between their species, there was a shared sense of weariness in the air. Over the next several hours, Alara and Thalvern exchanged stories. She learned of the Krylos's desperate efforts to stabilize their collapsing sun, their frustration at being misunderstood by outsiders, and their grief over losing countless lives during humanity's attacks. In turn, she shared humanity's own struggles, their fears of extinction, their hunger for survival, and their willingness to adapt when given the chance. By the end of the meeting, a fragile truce began to form. Thalvern agreed to consider a formal alliance provided humanity proved itself trustworthy. Alara promised to deliver helium-3 isotopes from Earth-controlled systems as a gesture of goodwill. However, tensions remained high among the crew. Some questioned whether aiding the Krylos was worth the risk, while others wondered if humanity's leaders would ever accept such an arrangement. Betrayal, just as negotiations seemed hopeful, disaster struck. A transmission came through from Admiral Hayes, broadcasting not just to the Invincible Dawn, but to the entire Krylos fleet. "Attention, Krylos forces," Hayes declared, his voice dripping with contempt. "This is Admiral Hayes of Earth Command. Your deception ends today. Prepare to face the full might of the human fleet." Before anyone could react, dozens of human warships emerged from hyperspace, surrounding the nebula. Their weapons were trained directly on the Krylos capital ship. Thalvern turned to Alara, its glowing eyes narrowing. "You betrayed us." "No," Alara protested, her heart sinking. "I had no idea he was coming. Please let me explain." But Thalvern wasn't listening. The Krylos immediately raised their defenses, preparing for battle. Chaos erupted as both sides scrambled to respond. Heroic sacrifice. Realizing the situation was spiraling out of control, Alara made a split-second decision. "Ravi, activate the quantum disruptor, target the human fleet." "Captain, are you insane?" Ravi exclaimed. "That'll kill us." "It's the only way to stop Hayes without bloodshed," Alara insisted. "Do it." Reluctantly, Ravi initiated the sequence. Once again, the disruptor unleashed a pulse of quantum energy, blanketing the area in a disruptive field. The human fleet systems faltered, their weapons rendered useless. For a brief moment, the battlefield fell silent. On board, the Invincible Dawn, the strain on the ship's core became unbearable. Alarms blared as critical systems failed one by one. The crew braced themselves as the vessel began to break apart. Through the chaos, Alara addressed her team over the intercom. "This isn't the end. Humanity and the Krylos still have a chance to build something greater together. Don't give up." As the ship drifted toward certain destruction, Thalvern hailed them once more. "Human captain, why do you sacrifice yourselves for us?" "Because it's the right thing to do," Alara replied simply. "Remember that." With those final words, the Invincible Dawn succumbed to the overwhelming strain, its battered hull disintegrating into the void. But its legacy lived on, as reinforcements from the Krylos homeworld arrived just in time to drive off the remaining human forces. The remnants of the Invincible Dawn floated silently in the nebula, its once mighty hull reduced to drifting debris. The quantum disruptor's pulse had neutralized Admiral Hayes's fleet long enough for the Krylos reinforcements to arrive, turning the tide of the battle. But at a terrible cost. Captain Alara Voss and her crew were presumed lost. On board the Krylos capital ship, Thalvern stood before a holographic display showing the scattered wreckage of the human warship. Its multifaceted eyes glowed faintly with a mixture of sorrow and respect. Though the humans had brought destruction to their people, this particular captain had shown extraordinary courage and paid the ultimate price for it. Retrieve what remains, Thalvern ordered its subordinates, and prepare a memorial. Their sacrifice must not be forgotten. Meanwhile, aboard one of the surviving human ships, Lieutenant Marcus Kane struggled to process what had happened. He and a handful of survivors had been rescued by the Krylos after ejecting from the invincible Dawn. Now, they found themselves stranded among beings they had once considered enemies. As Marcus sat alone in a makeshift quarters provided by the Krylos, his thoughts turned to Captain Voss. Her unwavering determination to bridge the gap between their species had inspired him, and now it fell to him and the others to carry on her mission. Shared struggles. In the days that followed, the surviving human crew worked alongside the Krylos to repair damaged vessels and tend to the wounded. Bonds began to form as both sides shared stories of survival and loss. For the first time, many humans realized the depth of the Krylos' plight, their desperate fight to save their dying star, their anguish over being misunderstood, and their resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. Chief Engineer Ravi Patel collaborated closely with Krylos technicians, marveling at their advanced technology. Together, they devised a plan to stabilize the collapsing sun using helium-3 isotopes harvested from Earth-controlled systems. It was risky, requiring cooperation on an unprecedented scale, but it offered a glimmer of hope for both species. Ensign Ava Torres spent hours learning about Krylos culture from Thalvern's advisors. She discovered that their bioluminescent markings served not only as communication tools but also as expressions of emotion. When she asked why Thalvern had chosen to spare the human survivors, the leader replied simply, "Because your captain taught us that trust can grow even in the ashes of betrayal." Final battle. Despite the progress made, tensions remained high. Admiral Hayes, furious over the failure of his assault, regrouped his forces and launched a final offensive against the Krylos fleet. Determined to crush the alien threat once and for all, he deployed every available warship, including experimental prototypes armed with devastating firepower. Thalvern called an emergency council, bringing together human survivors and Krylos leaders to strategize. Marcus Kane stepped forward, addressing the assembly with newfound confidence. "We may not have numbers on our side," he said, his voice steady. "But we have something Hayes doesn't: unity. If we combine human ingenuity with Krylos tactics, we can turn this battle around." The plan was bold. Use the repaired human ships as decoys to lure Hayes' fleet into a trap within the nebula's densest regions. Once inside, the Krylos would deploy cloaked drones to disable the human vessel's engines, while the remaining disruptors, salvaged from the invincible Dawn, would incapacitate their weapons. The operation required precise coordination, but both species rose to the challenge. As the combined fleet moved into position, Marcus couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. They were no longer separate entities fighting for survival. They were allies united by a common goal. When Hayes' fleet entered the nebula, chaos erupted. The Krylos drones swarmed the human ships, targeting their propulsion systems with surgical precision. Simultaneously, the salvaged disruptors unleashed pulses of quantum energy, crippling the enemy fleet's defenses. Caught off guard and unable to maneuver, Hayes' forces were quickly overwhelmed. Amidst the chaos, Marcus piloted a small reconnaissance craft toward Hayes' flagship, intent on confronting the admiral directly. When he boarded the vessel, he found Hayes seething with rage, surrounded by panicked officers. "You've doomed us all," Hayes snarled, pointing an accusatory finger at Marcus. "You think peace with these creatures is possible? They'll annihilate us the moment we let our guard down." "No," Marcus replied firmly. "They're not monsters, sir. They're just like us, fighting to protect what matters most. And if you can't see that, then maybe you don't deserve to. Lead." With Hayes detained and his fleet neutralized, the battle came to an abrupt end. The Krylos emerged victorious, but instead of retaliating against their attackers, they chose mercy, a decision influenced heavily by Captain Voss's example. Resolution. The aftermath of the conflict, representatives from Earth Command arrived to negotiate a formal treaty with the Krylos. Under pressure from public outcry and mounting evidence of Hayes' reckless actions, the admiral was relieved of duty, and placed under investigation. At the signing ceremony, held aboard the Krylos capital ship, Thalvern addressed the assembled delegates. Today marks the beginning of a new chapter, not just for our two species but for all who inhabit this galaxy. Let us build a future where cooperation triumphs over fear. Marcus Kane stood beside Thalvern, holding a small, holographic projection of Captain Alara Voss. Her image smiled warmly as if approving of the path they had chosen. In her honor, the treaty was named the Voss Accord, symbolizing the sacrifices made to forge peace. Closing scene weeks later, the Invincible Dawn's battered frame was towed back to Earth for repairs. Its scars told the story of a crew that had defied orders, risked everything, and ultimately changed the course of history. As Marcus stood on the observation deck, gazing at the stars, he felt a profound sense of gratitude. Humanity wasn't perfect, it never would be, but for the first time there was hope. Hope that even in a universe filled with danger and division, bridges could be built, alliances formed, and lives saved. He whispered softly, almost to himself, "We did it, Captain. We finally did it." Far beyond the nebula, the glowing remnants of a collapsing star flickered faintly, stabilized by the combined efforts of two species working together. Against all odds, light had triumphed over darkness, and somewhere out among the stars, Alara Voss's legacy lived on, a beacon of courage, compassion, and unity.